Throughout history, certain individuals have committed heinous acts that have left a lasting impact on society. Despite efforts to bring them to justice, some of these evildoers have managed to evade capture and fade into obscurity. In this video, we shine a light on 15 of the most notorious individuals pursued by the FBI, whose crimes continue to haunt the collective consciousness. Operating during the late 19th century, Holmes crafted a macabre legacy as one of America's first documented serial killers. Under the guise of a charming hotel proprietor, Holmes erected a labyrinthine lair of death in Chicago, where he lured unsuspecting guests to their demise. The Murder Castle, as it came to be known, featured secret passages, soundproof rooms, and gas chambers, facilitating Holmes's grisly crimes. Estimates of his victims range from 20 to over 200, making him one of the most prolific murderers in history. Dubbed the Gray Man and the Werewolf of Wisteria, Albert Fish was a depraved predator who preyed on young children in the early 20th century. His insatiable appetite for sadism and depravity led him to commit acts of unspeakable horror, including rape, mutilation, and cannibalism. Fish's predilection for targeting vulnerable victims, combined with his ability to evade capture for years, earned him a reputation as one of the most sinister figures of his time. Aileen Wuornos carved a path of destruction across Florida in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Murdering 7 men she claimed had solicited her for sex. Her troubled upbringing and experiences as a prostitute fueled her rage and propelled her on a killing spree that shocked the nation. Despite her claims of self-defense, Wuornos's cold-blooded crimes earned her a place among America's most notorious female serial killers, ultimately leading to her capture, conviction, and execution. Operating under the facade of a friendly clown, John Wayne Gacy, also known as the Killer Clown, perpetrated one of the most chilling killing sprees in American history during the 1970s. Historical records depict Gacy as a seemingly respectable member of society, active in community events and charitable work. However, behind closed doors, he lured and murdered at least 33 young men and boys in his Chicago home. Gacy's modus operandi often involved offering his victims construction jobs before subjecting them to sexual assault and strangulation. The horrifying discovery of the victims' bodies buried beneath Gacy's house shocked the nation and revealed the depths of his depravity. Gacy was convicted of multiple counts of murder and sentenced to death. He was executed by lethal injection in 1994. Infamous for his acts of cannibalism and necrophilia, Jeffrey Dahmer, known as the Milwaukee Cannibal, terrorized Milwaukee, Wisconsin between 1978 and 1991. Historical evidence paints Dahmer as a disturbed and isolated individual who lured young men to his apartment with promises of money or alcohol before drugging, sexually assaulting, murdering, and dismembering them. Dahmer's macabre apartment was discovered in 1991, revealing evidence of his gruesome crimes, including human remains preserved in acid-filled vats. Dahmer was arrested, tried, and convicted of 17 murders and sentenced to life in prison. He was murdered by a fellow inmate in 1994. Dubbed the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez struck fear into the hearts of Californians during a terrifying crime spree in the mid-1980s. Historical accounts depict Ramirez as a sadistic predator who invaded homes, murdered, and sexually assaulted his victims. His crimes, characterized by their random and brutal nature, left 13 people dead and several others injured. Ramirez's capture in 1985 brought an end to his reign of terror and provided closure to a community gripped by fear. He was convicted of multiple counts of murder, sexual assault, and burglary and sentenced to death. Ramirez died of complications from B-cell lymphoma while on death row in 2013. Ed Gein, known as the Butcher of Plainfield, was a notorious American murderer and body snatcher who operated in rural Wisconsin during the 1950s. Historical evidence paints Gein as a disturbed and reclusive individual who harbored an obsession with his deceased mother. Gein's macabre crimes included robbing graves, fashioning clothing and household items from human skin and body parts, and murdering 2 women. His grotesque actions shocked the nation and inspired numerous works of literature and film, including Psycho and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Gein was arrested in 1957, found guilty of murder, and confined to a mental institution until his death in 1984. Ted Bundy was an American serial killer and necrophile who perpetrated a series of murders across multiple states in the 1970s. Bundy's charming demeanor and good looks allowed him to deceive his victims and evade capture for years. Historical records depict Bundy as a cunning and manipulative predator who lured young women to their deaths with offers of assistance or employment before brutally assaulting and murdering them. His reign of terror ended in 1978 when he was apprehended in Florida. Bundy was convicted of multiple counts of murder and sentenced to death. He was executed in the electric chair in 1989. David Berkowitz, known as the Son of Sam, terrorized New York City during the summer of 1977 with a series of random shootings that left 6 people dead and several others injured. Historical evidence reveals Berkowitz's troubled upbringing and descent into madness, culminating in his belief that a demonic entity named Sam commanded him to kill. Berkowitz's reign of terror spread fear and panic throughout the city until his capture in 1977. He confessed to the shootings and was sentenced to life in prison. Berkowitz remains incarcerated in New York State Correctional Facility. Charles Manson was the leader of a cult known as the Manson family, responsible for a series of brutal murders in California in 1969, including the infamous Tate LaBianca killings. Manson's charismatic personality and twisted ideology led his followers to carry out his commands, resulting in the deaths of 7 people. Historical accounts depict Manson as a manipulative and volatile figure who preyed on vulnerable individuals and incited violence. Manson was arrested and convicted of multiple counts of murder and conspiracy. He died in prison in 2017, serving a life sentence for his crimes. Otis Toole and Henry Lee Lucas formed a deadly partnership that terrorized multiple states in the 1970s and 1980s. Historical records depict Toole and Lucas as drifters who embarked on a spree of rape, murder, and cannibalism. Their crimes, which they claimed to have committed together, included the deaths of dozens of victims, though the veracity of their confessions remains disputed. Toole and Lucas's disturbing exploits, characterized by their brutality and lack of remorse, shocked the nation and left a trail of devastation in their wake. Toole died in prison in 1996, while Lucas passed away on death row in 2001. Joseph Kallinger, along with his teenage son, Michael, carried out a series of sadistic murders and home invasions in Pennsylvania and New Jersey in the 1970s. Historical accounts depict Kallinger as a deeply disturbed individual who believed he was on a mission from God to cleanse society of sinners. Kallinger's crimes, which included the murder of 4 people, were marked by their brutality and senselessness. His capture and subsequent conviction shed light on the horrors perpetrated by him and his son. Kallinger was sentenced to life in prison and died behind bars in 1996. Gary Ridgway, known as the Green River Killer, was one of the most prolific serial killers in American history, responsible for the murders of at least 71 women in Washington state during the 1980s and 1990s. Historical evidence reveals Ridgway as a calculating predator who targeted vulnerable women, often prostitutes or runaways, who he would strangle and dump in remote locations. Ridgway's ability to elude capture for years and his meticulous disposal of evidence frustrated law enforcement efforts to apprehend him. His eventual capture in 2001 brought an end to his reign of terror and provided closure to the families of his victims. Ridgway pleaded guilty to 48 counts of murder and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Dennis Rader, also known as the BTK Killer, which stands for Blind, Kill, and Torture, terrorized Wichita, Kansas for over 3 decades with a series of brutal murders, sexual assaults, and taunting letters to the media and police. Historical records depict Rader as a meticulous and organized killer who meticulously planned his crimes and revealed the terror he inflicted on his victims and the community. Rader's capture in 2005 brought an end to his reign of terror and provided closure to the families of his victims. He pleaded guilty to 10 counts of murder and was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison. Robert Hansen, known as the Butcher Baker, was an American serial killer who targeted women in Alaska during the 1970s and 1980s. Historical evidence reveals Hansen as a skilled hunter who would abduct his victims, fly them to remote locations, and release them into the wilderness before hunting them down like animals. Hansen's crimes, which claimed the lives of at least 17 women, shocked the nation and left a lasting impact on the community. His capture and subsequent conviction brought an end to his reign of terror and provided closure to the families of his victims. Hansen died in prison in 2014 while serving multiple life sentences. The individuals highlighted in this report represent just a fraction of the evil and depravity that has existed throughout history. While some of these individuals have faced justice for their crimes, others have managed to evade capture and accountability. However, the FBI's pursuit of these individuals serves as a testament to the agency's commitment to upholding the rule of law and seeking justice for victims of crime. As we reflect on the dark chapters of history, may we remember the victims and strive to prevent such atrocities from ever happening again. As always, thanks for tuning in, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more forgotten moments of American history.